Okay, I'm going to call to order the regular meeting today, Tuesday, December 17th of the Planning Commission of the City of Atascadero. And you want to do the pledge? Okay, and Randy's going to do the pledge. Okay, can we get a roll call, please?
Commissioner Anderson,
I'm here.
Commissioner Heath,
Present.
Commissioner Hughes,
Here.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Here.
Commissioner Carranza. Here. Vice Chairperson Vanden Eyck.
Here.
Chairperson Keen,
Here.
all present.
Can I get an approval of the agenda, please?
I'll make the motion to approve the agenda. I'll second. Is this working? Mine's not working.
Yeah,
Who-
I can hear you. Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Carranza. Yes. Commissioner Heath,
Yes.
Commissioner Hughes,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Vanden Eyck,
Yes.
Chairperson Keen.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, I'm going to open public comment. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the commission on any matter not on this agenda and over which the commission has jurisdiction. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. If you want to come up to the podium, please state your name for the record before you begin speaking. Okay. Seeing nobody, I will go ahead and close public comment. We will move on to the consent calendar.
I'll motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second that.
Sorry, I didn't hear the second. Oh, thank you. Okay. Commissioner Carranza,
Yes.
Commissioner Heath,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hughes,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Vanden Eyck,
Yes.
Chairperson Keen.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, we will move on to our public hearings. Our first item is the Morrow Road Mixed Use Project. Commissioner Carranza, any ex parte?
No ex parte.
Commissioner Schmidt?
No ex parte.
Commissioner Hughes?
No ex parte.
Commissioner Heath?
No ex parte.
Commissioner Anderson?
No ex parte.
Vice Chairperson Vanden Eyck?
No ex parte.
And I have no ex parte either, so get to dazzle now.
Ready.
Okay, sorry about that. We're working through some technical difficulties here, but presentation's officially up on your screen here. Good evening, planning commissioners. My name is Eric Gomez. Hopefully all of you remember me. I'm associate planner here, and I will be presenting the first project on the regular agenda. This is the Morrow Road Mixed Use Project located at 7150 Atascadero Avenue and 7205 Morrow Road. It's project number Use 240086. So a quick overview of the project site.
Yeah, could we increase volume a little bit?
Is that any better? Beautiful. Sorry about that. A quick overview of the project site. Two addresses. That's because this is a double frontage lot or property. It's actually composed of two legal lots, one that fronts Atascadero Avenue and one that fronts Morrow Road, tucked away between the Brickyard development and the Moresco Plaza development. It's about 0.93 acres. It's zoned for the property that it's zoned commercial retail for the property that fronts Atascadero Avenue and commercial professional with a planned development overlay number 3 on the property that fronts Morrow Road. So a quick overview of what we're here to look at today. This is a conditional use permit for a mixed use development. Currently, mixed use developments are conditionally allowed uses in both of the zones identified for this project. They are proposing 4,500 square feet of ground floor commercial uses. I should say commercial uses up there. Sorry about that. And then 46 dwelling units on the upper stories. They're also requesting a parking reduction. So we'll go over that a little bit in the next few slides. Along with the project, since it is 2 properties currently, they will be doing a lot merger. The zoning we expect to resolve itself by the time we update our general plan comprehensively for the city, as well as a zoning ordinance to follow. And then just as an insight for you all, this is a state density bonus project. Again, we will go over that a little bit over what that means in the next few slides. On your screen, you can see a image of the site plan. So generally speaking, the site is designed for compatibility with the surrounding neighborhoods. As you saw in the previous slide, you do have some multifamily, some single family, some commercial retail, some commercial professional, all surrounding the property. Largely the commercial uses are along Morrow Road and the residential uses are along Atascadero Avenue. So what this project does is that it clusters the commercial uses for the property right up against Morrow Road on that first floor. And then the residential uses kind of stretch back towards Atascadero. So if you want to look at it a little bit like an L shape, right? The base of the L is along Morrow Road. That's where your commercial uses are. The stem of the L reaches towards Atascadero Avenue, and that's where your first floor parking garage and upper story residential units are. There are 56 parking spots proposed for this project, and there is sufficient landscaping per code requirement on the property, so that's mostly on the frontage and in the parking lot. And again, they will be doing a lot merger to merge the lots to eliminate what's currently kind of a partitioning lot line that would divide the building otherwise. Just wanted to give a quick mention to project site access along Atascadero Avenue and some of the site design along the back there. The picture on your screen is a picture of the heritage trees, beautiful heritage trees along Atascadero Avenue that we worked with the applicant to make sure aren't impacted by its development to the extent that we can. So access and the parking area at the rear towards Atascadero Avenue is designed with that intent. We're hoping that with the frontage improvements required for the site, they can retain those heritage trees. And the goal is to keep it looking like the property directly north of it. So that's kind of on the forefront of that picture there with planter areas for each individual heritage tree. So a quick discussion on the overall design or architecture of the building that's proposed. It is a contemporary style mixed use building. So you'll see the use of brick, stucco, board and batten, and some metal and wood accents on the building. It's actually consistent with all our objective design standards. So if you're looking for an example of what a project like that would look like, this is a good one. Those objective design standards are pretty new. This is one of the first projects that goes through and applies them to a building. I think it looks like a pretty nice building. But yeah, that includes window and roof treatments and wall massing treatments throughout to kind of give it more articulation for as big of a building it is. There are no signs specifically proposed with this development. They did provide the locations of some signs just to show us that there would be enough space for those commercial uses. All signs would be permitted through a sign permit down the line when a business comes in. This is a good picture to just kind of go over. It's a little cut off on the screen, I'm not sure why, but it does show your building massing and wall plane variations that we required as part of the objective design standards. And you can see how requiring that wall plane variation really adds character to the building. It allows it to play with the shadows and make it just look more interesting. And we're hoping that the applicant found it pretty easy to meet those standards as well, while creating additional housing units in our community. Going to speak a little bit to the site density, as well as the state density bonus and our current fractional density allowance. So we have a total allowed density on the site of 27.32 units. That density is allowed by our code, plus the density bonus that this project is applying under. So our code alone allows 22.32 units, and the density bonus allows 5 units. So again, total 27.32. Now, this project, outside of just providing a density bonus or using the density bonus per state law, is also applying our fractional density standards, also pretty new to Chapter 9, and you might remember those hearings. The application of fractional density is really up to the applicant and how they can make those numbers work based on how they broke down or how they chose units to come into play into their design. So obviously the smallest units up to 600 feet, as a reminder, are 0.5 of a unit. The mid-range size units, 600 square feet to 1,000 square feet, are 0.66, and then full-size units, which are units over 1,000 square feet, are 1. In this case, they end up with a total of 46 units proposed on the site using the 2 lower size ranges for those units. Included in that total are 2 affordable units, which is their requirement per the state's density bonus law. So a lot of words, but ultimately total of 46 units proposed. 2 of those will be affordable units. With the state's density bonus law, they are given some concessions and waivers from our development standards. So in this case, the project is eligible for 1 concession. They're using that to get a smaller setback for the parking lot from Atascadero Avenue. PD3 requires a 12.5-foot setbacks for parking lots. The project is moving forward with a 6-foot parking lot setback from Atascadero Avenue. So you'll see that reduction in the plans. And then for their waiver, they are waiving the height restriction of these commercial zones. That's from 35 feet. That's a 35-foot height limit restriction, which is typical for that zone. They're actually proposing this building at a 50-foot height. So you can see on the screen that picture that shows the measurements and dimensions of the building. One second, sorry. Sorry about that, just some minor technical difficulties. Along with this project, they're proposing a parking modification. So for this project, they're required to have 69 spaces on site, 50 of those residential, 15 commercial. That's including the reduction that the state density bonus law gives for density bonus projects. Ultimately, they are proposing 56 spaces on the site. it should be noted that our municipal code already grants the decision maker the ability to provide reduced parking based on on-site parking, based on bicycle parking, and based on peak hour demand. In this case, you have residential, which will likely use the parking on site during the evening hours, commercial, which is likely to use it during the afternoon and morning hours. And so for staff, we see this as a pretty appropriate request and pretty common in terms of mixed-use projects to request a reduction. And so there are findings included in your resolution to approve the parking modification being requested and allow the project to proceed with 56 spaces. So that brings us essentially to the end of this presentation, with staff recommending that the Planning Commission adopt draft PC Resolution A, approving a conditional use permit and lot merger, use 240086, to allow mixed-use development with the parking modification on APN 031052020 and 031051011, subject to findings and conditions of approval as included in your agenda packet. And with that, I will open it up to discussion and questions.
I have a quick question. How does the height of 50 feet compare to the Morrow development next door? Because I know they have some kind of high things. I mean, this building isn't going to tower over them, is it? Do you know?
Yes, I believe when I pulled up those plans, it was about 30 to 32 feet, I believe, on some of the architectural elevations for it.
Does anyone else have any questions for staff? Yes, Commissioner Schmidt.
Thank you for your presentation. Has the applicant agreed with the conditions that have been placed on the use permit?
Yes, I
Or
actually
have
got
you offered any objections to them then?
yeah, I actually got an email from him today saying that they agree with them.
Condition 16 talks about a site analysis. And is that for Morrow Road or for Atascadero, or what location is that for?
That was for the Atascadero Avenue intersection. The Morrow Road driveway already exists, so the site is accessed off of Morrow Road from the Moresco Plaza development. It's a shared easement, so they'll go up their driveway and into this property, and then a secondary driveway is proposed on Atascadero Avenue. A quick review of the site distance for that Atascadero Avenue driveway shows that it's fine. I think the concern at the time was largely with how they were showing the heritage trees around that area, but we don't have major concerns. Typically, our engineering standards allow for a well-maintained tree in that area.
So that's the trees are the issue.
Correct.
Then the spacing of the driveways will be similar to that, to the property to the north then. And I think that one photograph that you showed that had the tree that was at one of the driveway aprons, or the one to the most south end. And then there's the other one towards Morrow Road on Atascadero Avenue. So the spacing of these two driveways will be about the same from each other? The existing, the shared use, and the new one?
Yes, I believe it will be.
Site distance analysis, you talked about the trees, we know about the height concession. Condition 21 calls for SWIP. Did you not say that the acreage of the property was 0.93 acres?
Yep, that is one of our standard conditions. The acreage of the site is 0.93 acres. They are going to have to do some level of improvements along Atascadero Avenue, which is in the right of way. So that's going to make up some acreage. That's going to get them close to an acre, but we won't know the final area of disturbance until they have precise grading plans.
And then 100% of the site is being developed or disturbed?
Correct.
Thank you.
Anyone else have questions for staff? Okay, is the applicant present? If you'd like to come forward, if you have any additional information you'd like to share with us.
The applicant did send us a presentation, which I'll put up on the screen in just a second.
Tom, is your microphone on, or maybe it just needs to be really close? We have a,
Is that better?
yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Usually my voice carries pretty well, but the microphone will help.
With
Perfect.
the Zoom recording, you gotta get it on the
Excellent.
microphone. Thank you.
Okay, so first off, thank you very much, Eric, for all your help leading up to this and your presentation running them through. I don't want to go through and reiterate everything that he talked about, but I thought it might be helpful to just give a little bit into the thought process that went into it. If you can skip to the next slide, please. Okay, okay, there it is. I was going to say it's really blurry. So what we did on this is I thought the site plan might have been a little hard to read on the screen. So we just kind of clarified things a little bit here. So the existing sycamore trees, our initial design didn't quite save them. And so we came up with another alternative. So we're happy to say that we came up with an alternative that saves all those trees, works out really well. But I just wanted to point out where they were so there's no confusion over that. Next slide, please. And so this is kind of the lay of the land with the building. So the building in the brown section, those are residential apartments above the parking below the building. We have the bike storage area right off of the little entry plaza and the residential lobby that's serviced from the back. And all along Morrow Road is the commercial space fronting Morrow Road. Next slide, please. And then this is just a little diagram explaining how the site is accessed. So it's actually accessed through Moresco Plaza. There's an existing access easement through that parcel that serves this parcel. And so we won't have any new curb cuts along Morrow Road, which is nice because all that existing on-street parking will remain available. There is a pedestrian connection going from Morrow Road into the site. You can see there between the two commercial sections. And then the driveway access off of Atascadero Road is that area that was in the picture that we saw earlier. Next slide, please. And then upstairs, the residential, like it was mentioned, is kind of an L shape. Couple little features. We like to have the elevator in the center so it reduces the amount of travel that people have to do back and forth. And then another small little thing that makes it a little bit more livable is having the windows at the end of the corridor. So as you're walking down, you have some views out, and then each unit will have a private deck accessible from their living space. Next slide, please. And then at the top floor, we did pull the corner back and created a roof deck that would be an amenity space for the residents. It's right there off the elevator. And then a small interior clubhouse space, which would be an all-weather conditioned space that people would be able to use for whatever functions or different things that they wanted to do within that space. Next slide, please. Eric did a good job of mentioning that we incorporated the objective design standards. We went through those and worked with staff back and forth, and we were able to incorporate them all so that the building meets all those requirements. It addresses how it meets the street, how much transparency there is on the ground floor, the street trees, the articulation moving up the building, the breaking up the mass, no long blank walls. So I feel like we did a really good job, and the building benefited from the objective design standards and carrying those through. Next slide, please. And I'll just touch real briefly on the architecture. I think that Eric described it fairly well, but it's using a lot of high quality commercial grade material. So on the ground floor, it's a brick surface with a concrete wainscot, aluminum storefront. You can see the pass through there right in the center, kind of takes you through there. And then on the building itself, it's a combination of board and batten siding and a smooth finish stucco with metal railings and awnings and different roof elements. And if you can just go to the next slide, you can see that it truly is a four-sided architecture. This is the side facing north. And then the next slide, this is facing Atascadero Avenue in the back there. And then maybe next one, just kind of wrapping around the building. This is facing Moresco Plaza. So the one on the left-hand side is closer to the property line. The rest of the building is a little further back from that. You can see the driveway to the parking that's underneath the building there. Overall, this is a project we're very excited about, something we've put a lot of time and effort into. Obviously, Clint being the client, we have a lot of faith that this is going to be carried out to the highest standards, and we're really excited to see how it comes together. I think that's the last slide, but if you just click one, I think it's a blank page. Yep. Okay, perfect. And we're happy to answer any questions that you may have, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Schmidt.
In working with the objective to design standards, did you find that they're easy to work with?
We did, yeah. And it was funny because staff asked us the same questions. We're kind of the guinea pig, I think, and there was a lot of discussion back and forth. And we didn't have any recommended changes or modifications. We felt like they were appropriate for what we were proposing to do here.
And so did you find them beneficial?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kranza.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Hi, Tom. I wanted to ask about the actual development, this mixed use, like who do you envision, like as somebody that's representing community members that don't usually come to these meetings, I'm just curious, who do you guys see being the tenants in these proposed structures?
Well, I can speak to the ones that are staying in the building that we have, which is the block, which is on Traffic Way. So it's a very similar demographic. And in that mix, we have somebody that works at, actually, we have one affordable unit there, and it's someone that works at the 805, the Firestone Brewery in Morro Bay, in Paso Robles. We had somebody that was doing their PhD studies at Atascadero State Hospital. We have a teacher there. Other ones are a grad student at Cal Poly. It's a couple of people that work from home. So, it's everyday citizens. They run the gamut. I wouldn't say that there's one demographic that dominates.
Yeah, I was just curious because I was like, I see there's a lot of probably young entrepreneur or people that do work from home or commute, but maybe not ones with kids for
Correct.
this type of style. But yeah, no, that's awesome. I just was curious about this. So thank you.
And are you envisioning for the commercial space? Sorry, that's me.
Yeah.
Like a professional, so like office space, not like restaurants or retail, things like that? Or are you guys kind of open?
I think we're not setting it up necessarily for a restaurant right now, but I think it would be a similar tenant base to what's at Moresco Plaza, and it would just kind of carry over and be a continuation of that type of tenant.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? No. Oh, yes, Commissioner Anderson.
And I just wanted to know, from Moore Road and emergency services, are they going to have any difficulty getting to these apartments?
We've actually ran this by them and had a meeting with them and walked through it. And on the site plan, it's a little hard to see, but we do have the turning radiuses shown on there. So they've reviewed it and we meet their requirements to service the building. So there's no issue with that.
So they signed off on it. They were okay with it, the way
They
it's
did, correct.
done? All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Okay, I will open public comment on this agenda item. So anybody who wishes to speak on this matter can come up to the podium. You have 3 minutes. State your name for the record before speaking.
Hi, I'm Brad Matz. Is that all you needed?
Yep.
Okay. one of the questions is, well, how many bedrooms are these units?
So go ahead and state all your questions and then we'll answer them at the end.
And, we're wondering, is there only, each unit's only going to be a person in there with one car? It seems like, then if there's more than that, where are they going to park? Seems like, and are they going to be using the building, commercial building next door to park their cars on both sides? And then it's on the Tascadero Avenue, is there going to be a sidewalk? And then along the residential side, are they going to put a fence up there? I mean, I'm sure they're going to elevate the parking lot. So when they built the Morisco building, they were supposed to have a 6-foot fence, but it was on the plans. And then when they revised them, they took it off, and then whoever checks them didn't catch it, so they ended up not putting a fence up there. And they just said, well, we missed it. So that was the one thing. And then the height it's a pretty high building. It's going to be looking down on a lot of places around there. So
I just turned myself off. I appreciate your questions and we will confer with staff about all of those. So we'll get all those questions answered. Did you have any other ones?
I think that was about it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
I think the parking one is always a question. So maybe this is another one for the applicant to just kind of find out, like, are residents going to be able to use the Morisco Plaza for parking at night? Are those going to be restricted? I personally work in a work-live place, and we have problems with parking all the time in San Luis Obispo, but they also have one of those like car cubby shelf things that never works. So if you could just expand on the parking situation, that would be appreciated.
Thank you. And thanks for letting us present here tonight. We really appreciate it. So
Can
we
you state
also-
your name for the
I'm
record?
sorry, my
sorry?
name is Clint Pierce, and I'm part of the ownership of the project. And I wanted to note that we own the Morisco Plaza next door. And so we see the potential for a lot of shared parking. I think we have maybe 83 spaces over there. And we patrol that every night. We have mobile patrol 7 nights a week to make sure that it stays safe and clean. But in that, the reason I bring that up is one, to reassure folks that it is going to be a safe environment around there. But also, no one ever parks at night at Morisco Plaza. One of our tenants once in a while will ask us if they can park over the weekend, or, they have a friend come to town and maybe they'll use a space. But pretty much we have that entire parking lot available every night. So there's also, I think, 20-some spaces on Morrow Road, and I know we can't count those, but they are there, and they're nice, very comfortable spaces. In fact, when I go to visit Morisco Plaza, that's where I usually park. I just swing around and park right there on Morrow Road because it's just so convenient. So anyway, I'm confident that we'll have plenty of parking spaces, and the units, I don't know if I need to answer that, but they go from studios to 2 bedrooms. Most of them are one bedroom, but there's some 2 bedrooms also, so.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that matches kind of up with what I was thinking, and I'm glad to hear about the shared parking. But the fence thing, we didn't talk about any kind of fences or retaining walls or anything on the plans. Can you kind of go over those if there are any? Dividing the property from the residential space next door?
Yeah,
behind
so
Morisco?
there will be a 3-foot block wall along Atascadero Avenue, which will act kind of as a barrier for headlights from the parking lot to the adjacent residential uses across Morrow Road. That's just a standard of our municipal code. If your parking lot heads into a public road or a residential area, we will require you to install some level of fencing or solid barrier at minimum 3 feet to help address any incompatibilities between the parking lot and adjacent street, as well as the adjacent residential uses.
And can you bring
I'll
up
just-
the?
I'm going to piggyback on that
Oh,
real
yeah.
quick too. Our municipal code also requires a solid 6-foot fence between any commercial and residential property. So I know this one's kind of an L shape because it is that double lot frontage. And so anywhere that it's adjacent to single family residential property, there would be a solid 6-foot fence required.
And can you bring up the layout map again so we can see how far the apartment building is from the residential?
Yes, 1 second.
I just want to address the looking into the residential parking or the residential lot question.
So on the site plan, on your screen, on the far right where it says surface parking, that is the Tascadero Avenue side. So you have parking that is facing towards the Tascadero Avenue, those compact spaces. And then just across that drive aisle towards, let me see if my mouse works here. I don't know if you can see my mouse.
I don't want to speak out of turn, but I do have that distance if you.
Sorry?
I said, I don't want to speak out of turn, but it's 54 feet from the building to the property line along the
Okay,
Tascadero.
on
Road.
the south side.
On the Tascadero side, yes.
Okay. I don't know what that looks like mathematically, but it seems like a far distance.
Well, and just a comment about the height. It is basically a story taller than what our municipal code generally allows. The state very clearly states that additional height has to be allowed and approved by a city if requested as part of a state density bonus project. So it will be one of the tallest buildings in Atascadero thus far. We're going to have more in our downtown area, hopefully eventually. But height is not something that we can deny unless there's a specific health and safety concern associated with that. And we have checked in with our fire department, and with a certain additional inclusions in the building for a dry stand pipe and things like that, they are able to service the building at the height that's proposed.
It was more, I just wanted to see the distance and address that concern. So it is 54 feet from the building to the house, and I think the house has got trees surrounding it, but it's a legitimate concern, and I'm happy to talk about it. So, yes, Commissioner Schmidt. Oh, wait, hold on. Is there any other public comment? Okay, I'm going to close public comment for this item and bring it back to the commissioners for discussion. And Commissioner Schmidt, go ahead.
Excuse me. I'm still having a little trouble hearing.
With respect
It's very
to-
muddled over here. Could we get these monitors turned on or a speaker directed towards the council or committee?
It's
I can attempt it. It's an interim sound system, and it's extremely difficult because if we don't point them at the audience, they can't hear. I'll work on it and see what we can do.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
We're used to echoing. With respect to the concessions, we've had them on several projects. Isn't not that the state says we have to approve them, but aren't we have been told that the findings are very difficult to deny a concession? Is that?
Yes, it has to be health and safety related. So it has to be, it cause an unsafe situation or a situation where our emergency services could not provide service to the building.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. If no one else has anything to say, I'd like to make a recommendation.
Yes, Commissioner Kronza.
Okay, I just have a comment to make to my commissioners, being that it is going to be the tallest building in our city. I was looking a little bit more into not the packet, but the 2005 Community Facilities District. We have like an extra tax that we do that are, I don't want to eat this microphone. I'm going to do my best. Okay. So the Community Facilities District, it's basically a fee to mitigate essential services for more development and more, folks that we're going to have living in the city. So I was just, we're basically setting a precedence of like, okay, we're having a whole story higher. We just talked about the fire department, safety, all that. I didn't know if it's anything to be noted or anything from staff. I was just reviewing the 2023-2024 report of the district, and they're all different fees. Every acreage size, every parcel, and it's kind of discretionary, it seems, with certain APNs and different projects on those sites. So I just thought I would bring that up.
I think that may be beyond our jurisdiction.
I understand.
above our
I
pay
just have to,
grade.
I have to bring
Yeah.
it up because it
Yeah.
just seemed like, okay, this is like a very new thing. So the whole story
Yeah.
higher.
I'm happy to
Yeah.
provide a little bit of information.
I knew you would, Kelly.
So the city did adopt a community facilities district in 2005. So any discretionary project that has more than 4 units of residential units does require annexation into the community facilities district. It is a set fee per unit. There are a couple variations in that, and it covers the additional costs to emergency services and park services that's associated with residential units. So in 2005, we did a study that said the sales tax and sorry, not the sales tax, the property tax from residential properties is not sufficient to cover the services that are provided for new residential units. And so this basically covers the gap between the property tax and the actual service costs. And so those costs are adjusted every year, but they're adjusted the exact same throughout each district. We have one main district and then we have one sub-district within that area that is the La Plaza project in downtown because they have a little bit different math associated with that project. But it is universally applied to any discretionary action with more than 4 units.
Vice Chair Vanden Eyck.
Sure. I'd just like to just correct Commissioner Carranza. City Hall will still be the tallest building in town.
Anyone else comments or questions before we let Commissioner Schmidt make a recommendation or a motion?
A motion.
Okay.
I'd like to recommend to the Planning Commission a motion to approve the resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Atascadero, California, approving a conditional use permit and lot merger, USE 240086, for a mixed-use development with a parking modification on APNs 031, 052, 011, and APN 031, 052, 020.
I will second that.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Chairperson Keen,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Carranza,
Yes.
Commissioner Heath,
Yes.
Commissioner Hughes,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Vanden Eyck.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Good luck with your project. We're going to take a 15-minute break and then we'll continue. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I remember being turned into sounds like we had headphones off. I know, it's very like It's still, it's really muted. We're used to just screaming, you know?
I know this isn't the chaos I'm used to.
Yeah.
Love this. Or is that part of yours? It's actually my, from my birthday present. This is what they're gonna put this over there. Very cool. I have a soft voice. No. That's okay. Yeah, it was up on that last time. AB 1600 is the state law that allows. And, yeah, and we originally studied that originally like 2002. It's pretty much outdated. I think there should be, I was trying to get, one of the areas is 80 years. And they pay a public facilities fee. And there isn't a category for it. So what we do is that we have three levels of fees. Basically 16,000. So what we do is take the lease of 16,000. Sign that. I think now we have a pro-rata, I like to now that can lower it if you don't have a full hundred square feet. It'll be lowered. Well, what I was trying, I almost had it basically good. Mobile homes. But again, we don't have. Yeah.
Oh, we are. Okay, we didn't need, whoa, now I'm really loud. We didn't need a whole 15 minutes, but I'm gonna call us back to order since everyone is here. So we are going to move on to our next item, which is the Del Rio Ranch. And we're gonna do in the same order. We'll have our staff presentation, then we'll hear from the applicant, and then we will do public comment. Except that first, we're gonna do ex parte. Commissioner Carranza, is there any ex parte on this?
No ex parte.
Commissioner Schmidt?
No expertise.
Commissioner Hughes?
No ex parte.
Commissioner Heath?
No ex parte.
Commissioner Anderson?
No ex parte.
And Vice Chairperson Vanden Eyck?
None for me either.
And none for me. Yeah, none for me. Okay, Dazzle. Do we get to hear from Eric again?
Yes, you do. Lucky you. What a
Wow.
lucky day. All right, we'll try to get through this one also a little bit bigger, just a little bit bigger of a project. But we'll get through it with great ease, hopefully. This is Del Rio Ranch. This is at 2405 El Camino Real. You will see it in your resolution under a number of addresses and a number of APNs that I didn't want to list on this title page for you all. Otherwise, that pretty picture of the building would have gotten covered. This is case number DEV 24044. Alrighty, so we're looking at a 26-acre project site. It is known, again, by those APNs and addresses in your resolutions. But for the purposes of this presentation, just keeping it short, this is the Del Rio Commercial Area Specific Plan Southeast project site. It's composed of 11 different parcels on the southeast corner of the El Camino Real and Del Rio Road intersection. So just a really brief background on this site. It is part of the Del Rio specific plan area. Del Rio Commercial Area Specific Plan was adopted initially in 2012 with minor amendments in 2020 to account for some changes in the environment around the plan area. It was originally submitted as part of the Walmart site, as you might remember, for Atascadero. But since then, those plans have been scrapped. Those entitlements have been expired. A few years ago, we had an application come in for what we'll call the Del Rio Ranch 1.0. And that was a little bit different of a project. It included some similar uses, a lot of commercial retail, an amphitheater, RV parking, camping areas, but it also included some residential multifamily uses towards the eastern boundary of the property shown on your screen in yellow. The commercial areas from the previous project in blue, and have the outdoor uses and event uses in green. All that being said, that is no longer the project that's being proposed. It's since evolved to Del Rio Ranch 2.0. Here is the project description. So they're coming in largely for a master plan of development for an RV resort and commercial center. Part of that master plan of development includes a height modification for the two primary commercial buildings, as well as an extended stay hotel, which is essentially speaking towards a hotel that'll have kitchens in every hotel unit. They're including a general plan amendment. So that high density residential area that you saw on the previous slide is actually going to go to general commercial to make the site more viable for commercial uses. And because the site is listed in the housing elements housing inventory or residential site inventory, we have to go in and amend the housing element to remove it from that list. Last but not least, it is also a zone change. Zone change is just for consistency with the general plan. So where the general plan change was going from high density residential to general commercial, this is now going from residential multifamily with 24 units per acre to commercial retail. There's also going to be a number of specific plan amendments. Largely, they're just cleanup of the language in there to make the project consistent with the specific plan. So we'll start first with that master plan of development. Essentially, we have 22,000 square feet of commercial shells with an above story extended stay hotel. Again, that extended stay hotel is pointing to the existence or proposal for full kitchens in each unit. And those two structures that compose that 22,000 square feet will include a height modification to allow it to go above the height of typically allowed in the Del Rio commercial area specific plan. They're also proposing a RV resort with 98 RV spaces, 70 glamping unit spaces, and a lot of site amenities. Think of health spas, bar grottos, a clubhouse, a lot of different site amenities as well as incidental commercial uses, which include golf carts, golf cart storage, vehicle and RV maintenance areas. They're also with the site proposing outdoor event areas, as well as 247 parking spaces. So that site plan is on your screens. And just to give you a quick overview, those two large commercial structures, 22,000 square feet of commercial area, those are located on the bottom left side of the screen. Those are tucked and clustered around the Del Rio Road and El Camino Real intersection. And those are largely the two commercial components that exist as a shell purpose, if you will. Beyond that, the rest of the area of the site is largely used incidental to or primarily for the RV resort component. And that is where you're going to have those 98 RV spaces. Those are along Del Rio Road. Those are also along the eastern boundary of the site towards Rio Rita. And the remainder of the site will be the glamping units and incidental commercial uses. So like I mentioned, the health spas, bar grottos, a manager's unit, a lot of different outdoor spaces and event areas for the site. A lot of effort was taken to design the site, taking into consideration drainage and stormwater, and making sure that they can blend those into the overall design of the site, while also providing a lot of gathering spaces and outdoor areas, which was one of the primary focuses in designing the property. So a quick review of those two larger commercial buildings with the extended stay hotel. This is what we're calling the commercial corner of the property at the Del Rio Road and El Camino Real intersection. You'll see that the general design for these buildings on site are Tuscan Mediterranean style. They include a tile roof, stucco wall, stone accents, large entryways and windows with gathering areas in between. There are special findings for that extended stay hotel that's included on the above floor or the upper floors of these buildings in your resolution. Again, there are 18 of those units, and all of them will have a kitchen inside them. Along with those findings, you're also going to find findings for findings for a height modification. They are allowed to, generally structures in this area are allowed to be 35 feet. These are actually being proposed at a 50-foot height. That being said, they are pretty well located. Again, similar to our last project, the site is designed for compatibility, right? So these projects are being put front and center to be prominent along the Del Rio El Camino Real intersection, where they're going to be surrounded by other commercial uses and give the site kind of this prominent entryway from the surrounding properties. I did want to give a quick mention to some of the perimeter walls that you may have noticed on the plans, because they are going to be taller than what we might usually see on some of our commercial projects. Along the El Camino Real project frontage, you're going to have a 12-foot tall retaining wall that's going to run for a good section or length of the El Camino Real frontage, and Del Rio Road will have a screening wall that again is meant to screen from the parking area. A lot of the reason for these taller walls on the site, one is due to the site design and grading design, the topography and what they needed to do to level out the property. But also there was direction for the design from the design review committee to make sure that we were screening parking areas for the RV parking spots, which is why you see some of these taller walls. That being said, the walls won't be just blank walls that are spanning for yards throughout the site. They're going to be treated with the arches and textured material to make sure that you're not just staring at a blank wall while you're walking down the frontage sidewalks on these properties. Again, to give you to give you all an idea of what that'll look like from the property frontages. Here you have sketches of what the frontages will look like along both the Del Rio road frontage and El Camino Real frontage. I'm going to try to stop saying the word frontage so much. But these are the two these are the two entryways. So at the top left of your screen, that's the Del Rio frontage. And you have the screening wall as well as some of the architectural tower elements that are going to be incorporated into that wall to give it a better appearance from the street. Similarly, on the El Camino Real frontage, you have the same type of wall. This is just outside of their event area. Again, given treatment with arches, and there'll be texturized material to give it just another better view from the street. A lot of landscaping, a lot of street trees being proposed along those frontages to help screen and buffer and create some visual massing for those walls as well. Something to mention in the lower right side, this property is gonna be required to install frontage improvements, so curb, gutter, sidewalk, per the requirements both of the Del Rio commercial area specific plan, and also that one of the conditions in your resolution today for the master plan development, which are the improvements that are being either included or required or modified by our city engineer. One of those improvements being the bus stop, which you see kind of at that bottom right side. They're going to have to provide a bus stop for the city along that area. There are conditions to ensure that that happens. And to the extent that we can, provide that bus stop in substantial conformity with the design that they've shown here today, as long as it's meeting all other transit standards and engineering standards. A quick discussion of the event areas proposed. So on the entry from El Camino Real, as you're entering the site, if you were to look directly left, you're going to see what looks like a basin, but it's actually meant as a flex event space and event lawn with a stage on there. On that image, you can see that building on the upper right. That'll be the stage, and it'll look down into this basin that's acting as an event lawn. They're also proposing to use some of their their parking areas as event flex areas. So for example, on that bottom right picture, that is the 2 commercial buildings and their parking area. That parking area will be composed of gravel, and it'll be able to be used as staging or event area or additional event area when they're having events on the site. There are conditions to ensure that we are aware when they're using site parking for events, just to make sure that there's a minimal disruption to the community and that they have a plan for how to move forward with parking. There's also restrictions as to when and how they can have amplified noise on the property. But generally speaking, they will be coming in for event permits during those situations, or an administrative use permit if they wanted to have events that went outside of the parameters listed in the conditions. A brief discussion on signage. So their main signage for the site are going to be 3 monument signs. One along the Del Rio Road and the El Camino Real entries. So that's the upper image on your screen right now. That's going to be an 8.5-foot tall monument sign. And the bottom one, that's going to be the sign you're going to see from the Del Rio Road, El Camino Real intersection. Both compatible with the architecture or the overall architecture being proposed for the site, using that same kind of stone material and stucco colors, with some tower elements being incorporated where possible. It should be noted that there are signs being proposed, or architectural elements for these signs being proposed in medians at the entryways along Del Rio Road and along El Camino Real. Beautiful, but may not be able to stay after they do a final engineering of the site. The reason for that is because we want these roads to align with surrounding driveways. So driveways on Marketplace, driveways at Mission Oak. And so when you're looking at the engineering for that and figuring out the spacing, those towers may not be able to remain. But for now, they're showing the plans, and if they can keep them, great. But we just wanted to make sure that was clear to the applicant and to you all. So stepping away from the actual physical development of the site, we have a few slides just on some of the policy changes here. So land use and zone change, they're going from a general commercial retail, and high density residential zoning and land use designation to the proposed general commercial and commercial retail across the site. Again, this is largely to make the site more viable for commercial uses. They were never required to develop residential on it. It just happened to be their zone, and changing it from that high density residential to the general commercial is a little bit more attuned to the vision for the Del Rio commercial area. A quick discussion about the housing element update that goes along with these changes. So when the city receives their regional housing needs allocation, we are required to identify specific sites that have the development potential to meet the minimum numbers identified by SLOCOG. And so we did through our housing element, but this site was one of those listed in that inventory of sites. And so what we're doing here is that we're removing this property from that list. And on your screen, you're going to see kind of what that inventory said. That site accounted for approximately 39 units. But with the remaining sites that we've identified that meet that RHNA number, or that are counted towards that RHNA number, the city will continue to meet our required housing units. And so there are findings included for the amendment of the housing element in your materials. Those were revised, and some revised findings were given to you all in advance of the meeting. And now speaking towards the Del Rio commercial area specific plan amendments. Again, these are largely minor text and map changes, just making everything consistent with what the project is proposing. There are 2, I suppose, major changes or significant changes that you should all be aware of. The first one being the Del Rio commercial plan was approved with a limitation on RV parks, saying that they were only allowed on the southeast project side, and also they can only cover 20% of the project site. And so they're actually proposing to remove that restriction to allow them to cover more area and almost the entirety of the project site with those RV spaces and RV uses, with the idea that this will be an RV resort. They're also proposing a lower or a smaller setback from the southern property boundary. So that property boundary abuts the multifamily residential zone, and they're proposing to drop that from 30 feet to 20 feet. Staff believes that this is appropriate for the use. What they're proposing in that area could be easily screened, and there's also conditions identifying what and what cannot happen in that area. Specifically, we don't want any major outdoor noise generating uses or car washes or heavy auto repair for any vehicles occurring in any of those buildings, whether or not it's incidental to those uses. But 20 feet, we do believe is sufficient or a sufficient setback from the high density residential zones. We also have an idea of what some of those zones are going to be developed with at this point, and are confident that there will be sufficient space between the neighboring uses. And this one. And then just really quickly on your screen, you can see that red line is that proposed 20-foot buffer, that green line being the existing 30-foot setback. So that leads us to, again, the end of this presentation with our recommendation that the Planning Commission adopt draft PC Resolution A, recommending that City Council approve the general plan amendment, zoning map amendment, and amendments to the Del Rio Road Commercial Area Specific Plan, and adopt draft PC Resolution B, recommend the City Council approve a conditional use permit for a master plan development for the Del Rio Ranch project. And I'll open it to discussions and questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Schmidt?
Getting used to this. I dislike acronyms, but I think I know what it is now. Number 2, condition, you have a reference to DRCASP, that's the Del Rio something specific plan. That's being discussed on condition 2 on page 158.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. What's the CA stand for?
Commercial area.
Thank you. In the illustrations that you presented to us, are they representative of what the project's going to look like? I mean, there are a lot of palm trees in these illustrations, and I noticed on one plan view, kind of in the center of the streets, there was what appeared at a plan view kind of palm trees. So are they proposing that any palm trees?
We, our materials are more or less what the project's going to look like. There are obviously going to be some minor changes as we go through the construction permit process. For purposes of efficiency, we wanted to bring it to hearing before you today. There is a condition that addresses things like the palm trees. So all landscaping on the site will have to be plant species that correspond to our local climate. So palm trees we know will not survive.
And do. I mean, we have plenty of them around.
Yeah, we have a landscape condition that they all be sort of more native and drought tolerant landscape features.
I saw that, so thank you. The amendments that are being proposed, are they going to be applicable to all properties within the specific plan or just this site specifically?
They're largely for this site specifically.
And then why not everywhere?
So the way that the specific plan is organized is it has development standards for the entirety of the project area, but it's also organized into the specific sites that are being developed. There's a little bit different use list on each site. Some of the setback restrictions are applicable to all areas. There is a height allowance, but this particular exception will be specific to this project through the master plan of development. So it's a little mix of both, but the specific plan is very focused on each site individually where appropriate and covers the entirety of the specific plan area where appropriate.
Thank you. I can kind of. Condition 12 on page 160 talks about hours of operation. And I guess that's more specifically focused in on amplified sound. Is that because it's within surrounded by a resident or within a residential area, or is that something that the applicants have agreed to and want?
Yeah, the applicants have reviewed the conditions. It is largely because there are residential uses around it, but also just a standard condition that we would put on a project that has any amplified noise. It's pretty standard for amplified noise in the city to end no later than 10 p.m. It does give them the space or the flexibility where if they want to have amplified noise or events that go beyond these limitations, like I mentioned earlier, to apply for an administrative use permit.
I see that, or AUP is what it's referred to here. So it's kind of a conundrum in the sense that now we have mixed use houses, which is, or uses, which is residential. But we allow for music to be in downtown areas where we have residential areas now, and we're adding more and more. And I've noticed, I've known in city of San Francisco for a long time, there are a lot of complaints from people who live in the downtown core based on the noise that comes from the bars and stuff in that area. So is this something that all businesses have to have that have amplified music of any type, or is it just because it's, again, at this location?
So all amplified noise currently in the city of Atascadero requires approval of an administrative use permit. So that's where we would look at surrounding uses. Just as a side note, not related to this project, but when people move downtown, they are generally there for a livelier atmosphere. And most mixed use projects that we have do sign an agreement that notifies all residential users that they are in a commercial area and are subject to greater noise.
Okay, thank you. Condition 15 on page 161 says that there's 84 native trees being removed. It didn't look like on the aerial photograph there's 84 trees on the property. Is that what the report says? 84 trees?
We were basing it on previous projects that have been approved through the Del Rio Commercial Specific Plan. So every time the site's been looked at, those trees were accounted for and recorded in the Del Rio Commercial Area Specific Plan. At the time of construction, I think it says in that condition that they'll be required to do an arborist report and get us an accurate tree count. Ultimately, they will have to meet the requirements of the native tree ordinance, which means they'll either be paying mitigation fees for the trees being removed, or they'll be having to account for them in the landscaping that's going to be going into their site.
Okay. Condition 19, bicycle storage. Is that something that ties itself to the use, the glamping, the RVs and things like that, or is that something that's specific, that the specific plan requires, or is that something that our commercial zone requires?
So the answer to that is, so the answer is that the Del Rio specific plan does call for many modes of transportation within the site and connectivity across this site and onto other sites, whether that be pedestrian connectivity, vehicle connectivity, or bike connectivity. In this case, they're meeting their parking requirements, and they're also providing parking to make sure that they can reduce that to the extent that they can. So that's basically a bike rack and a motorcycle parking spot for every 20 spaces.
Good. Condition 24 talks about screening certain ground infrastructure containers and so on. Is there going to be, I mean, if they're being screened, are they going to be be able to be seen and found if there's going to be a problem or anything like that? Is there any concern about maintenance and upkeep of those facilities if they're being screened?
This is a pretty standard condition for all commercial projects. There isn't really, they are required to maintain any screening and landscaping on site for in perpetuity for the project, as long as the use is effective on, or operating on the property. As far as ongoing maintenance for the site, that's something that's left to the applicant.
Thank you. Condition 28 talks about some of the glamping features and makes a statement that they are being treated, they need to get building permits to do that. Kind of has there been any discussion within the building department about how it complies with the city's building code or the state's building code in terms of shear, anything like that on an ERT that has a flexible building?
There has been discussions, our building official, this was a very specifically and very intentionally written condition. Our building official did look at the site. We know that some of these structures will require building permits. We did speak to the applicant about making sure that they can meet building permit requirements, and they let us know that they've already been considering it. We did look at examples from other jurisdictions in terms of what they've been doing to permit these and what standards they have to meet. Ultimately, the building official doesn't necessarily tell them what to meet. It's up to their design or design professional to give us the criteria that they're meeting per building code, and our building official will confirm that.
And have we found other jurisdictions that allow ERTs?
Yes, I believe Flying Flags in Avila Beach is a good example here locally that is doing yurts that were required to be sprinklered and have building permits before they were occupied.
Condition 29, should the state claim permitting jurisdiction, what would the state be involved with the RVs, where they might want to have a state licensed mobile home park or something, or?
Correct. Yeah. So the State Department actually takes over licensing requirements for special occupancy parks. And so there is a potential that for them to operate, they will have to get a license requirement, or the state will pull them in for one. In that case, this condition is really meant to say whether or not you have to be licensed by the state. That doesn't mean that you can deviate from the project we have approved. We want you to look the way that we approved you, because this isn't just an ordinary RV park. This is really an RV resort. They're including really nice amenities and making this seem high end, and that's what the product is meant to be, and we don't want that to be diluted by any state requirements.
I agree, and hopefully the applicant agrees too, because when the state license is a mobile home park, the local jurisdictions ability to request certain requirements is hindered by the state. And sometimes what can be looked at, typically the staff reports say, we normally ask for this, but we can't because of state requirements, and over and over and over again. And so I'm happy to hear that or I hopefully the applicant will be wanting to keep it nice for their people who they work, support. Last one, condition 39, no mechanical car wash facilities and so on. You had mentioned that there was going to be some type of repair, and I'm assuming that's for RVs. And so how far does that extend? They be able to work on an RV on the property and still meet the specific plan requirements and this condition?
So it's not proposed to be a full mechanics area. So this is for some detailing or hand washing of RVs. If you have a flat tire, perhaps they would help you get somewhere to fix it. This is really meant to be a very light support for your RV, and it is not a full mechanics auto shop.
So what defines mechanical car wash?
So anything that would have like blower or things of that nature.
So if they had a high pressured spray hose or something, that wouldn't be considered mechanical.
Potentially, if it was connected to a massive compressor that was very noisy, then that would not be allowed based on their proximity to residential uses.
It seems with, I mean, with the height and size of RVs, that something is going to be needed to be able to provide that convenience to people, and I can understand why they would want to. So hopefully there's some flexibility there. Okay, thank you very much.
Anyone else have questions for staff? Yes, Commissioner Carranza.
I mostly just have a question about, because I can't really understand it looking at these plans. What of the site is public use, or is none of it? Only if you're an occupant or, you know, paying fees to stay there, do you get to use any of the space?
So the commercial area of the site, which is at the corner, which is the two commercial buildings, will be a publicly accessible area. So that is for anybody to come. I know they're trying to get some entertainment style uses in there, maybe some restaurants. There's a large patio area, kind of outdoor space in front of those buildings that would be available to the public. Basically, that road that kind of bisects the lower third is a publicly accessible road. It can't be gated. It is part of the entry into the project and some of the areas that can be used by the public. The small event lawn area too would kind of be a publicly accessible space. I imagine that when they have larger events that might be paid for, of course, you would need a ticket to get in. But in general, that is not solely for the people staying on the site.
Okay.
I do want to add also, as far as just publicly available areas, something that I didn't mention in my presentation, which I should have, is if you see where my laser pointer is on that entry from El Camino Real, this road leading all the way towards the high density residential areas to the south will actually be a public road. It will ultimately be dedicated to the city and allow for a better connection to those residential areas, which will ultimately help them increase their development potential back there. It does terminate in a little bit of a roundabout, which will provide additional connectivity throughout the rest of the site.
Yeah, thank you. I haven't seen a smile yet in the audience, but this project, I will say, is exciting. I get that there's been a lot of tension on the outskirts of everything, but I'm just grateful that there's a smile right now. It was just on my agenda. Anyway, I am curious too, though, as a resident of Atascadero and somebody that is in the north side actually too. I personally have children, and I mentioned this back when we reviewed the Barrel Creek project across on the other side of El Camino, but we don't have any kind of play structures at all really in the north side of Atascadero, and not needing to do any more changes to this site specifically. I just think that it would be interesting, and I didn't know if it came up at all as a recreation opportunity. I see other RV resorts have things like splash pads, or at least, you know, cookie cutter play structures with swings or slides that are not necessarily permanent, that need like huge permits, but just something that's already to code. So I didn't know if that's something that the applicant talked about or had considered or anything like that with staff. So it's just something I think that would be worthy of noting. Yeah.
Sorry, and really quickly, we do have quite a few members of the applicants team here. They did prepare a presentation whenever you are all ready to hear that and done with your questions for staff.
I was just waiting for that end of the table to stop talking. Okay, if someone from your team would like to step up and do the presentation, we welcome that. Jason, did you have a question for staff before we do the presentation?
did want to say, address Dennis's question about the palm trees. Since they won't be palm trees, are we going to get cell service requirements for those? I mean, that's quite dense.
They'll put pine trees.
I'll get
on
really
it.
good coverage
Yeah.
there. Thank you. And I'm glad we're doing something with this property. I think it's fantastic. Very exciting.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Good evening, commissioners, city staff. That was a great presentation, by the way. It's a bigger project than the last one, so my name is Enrique Cervantes. I'm with the HT Studio here in Tascadero. And I just want to say how excited we are about this project. We're a small firm, so seeing something like this, at least now in paper, makes us very excited. So I just want to take a little bit of step back and talk to you a little bit about our vision and what we went through when we started laying this site out. So it's a huge site, beautiful site, 26 acres with beautiful landscape, great views. And so we took that really into account on what we were trying to do. We thought of doing a high quality destination, not just proposing RV parking, but going a step further, providing amenities that would work in conjunction with the project. Also, tying it all together with the commercial buildings. So as you can see on the slides, beautiful trees, beautiful oak trees, and we took that into consideration. Next slide, please. So these are some of the early sketches that we kind of did and we share with the city with regards to when we started thinking about laying out all the pieces for this site. It's basically what you're looking at is study of what are the trees and the ones we thought could stay and the ones that could possibly needed to go with what we were proposing. Next slide, please. So kind of the same thing, early sketches. Oops, they're all the same.
Sorry about that.
But what we're looking at is, looking at the trees, the landscape, everything started laying out and I'll touch base on, I guess, a question of the public, semi-public and more private area. And what you're looking at is how we started delineating the circulation with the entry arrangements, the public road to the neighborhood side, neighboring side, excuse me. Next slide, please. So we started kind of delineating this zones for the commercial, the semi-private, the glamping, where would the RV spaces go? And next slide, please. So we ended up with this kind of 3 zones. You have your commercial, your resort, and your RV zones. We already went into a little bit of detail on the commercial side, the event lawn area, and then on the resort, it's kind of the semi-public area would be your cabanas, your pool house, your Airstreams, and at the outer edge, you will have your RV zone kind of strategically placed for easy access, easy exit out of the site, and also kind of sheltering those RV spaces from the public, so that together with the sidewalls would work to kind of make it a little bit more private and connected with the commercial area. Next slide, please. So these are some of the initial sketches that we created, thinking about the public plaza and also the parking area as an event space, maybe on bigger events. You can take that area and convert it into farmer's market, anything like that that would require a bigger space. Same thing with the lawn. this is the opportunity to have people gather, have a small stage, and a little bit less formal. And we're not proposing to be a loud stage. And another area where you can do pop-ups and kind of set up the same way. Next slide, please. And here kind of we're starting to see some of the elevations for the commercial zone, the architecture that we're trying to propose for building 1 and 2, 3 stories with the hotel units. And kind of the uses that Eric mentioned with commercial areas that would propose restaurants or typical uses that would make people congregate on this spaces. And these being the anchor to Del Rio and El Camino Real. That's what you'll basically be looking at. So we took that into consideration to kind of follow the same language throughout the site for the rest of the buildings. Next slide, please. Again, kind of you can start seeing the same language. We took it from various schematic sketches to try to keep the same language, try to keep the same aesthetics, layouts for this glamping. You have a cabana area with a water feature. This will be a very shallow water feature. Your main pools would be located right next to the Building 9, which is the clubhouse. So next slide, please. Again, smaller buildings. Well, we're thinking of keeping the same style, same high quality of architecture throughout the site for amenity buildings that will create this paseo area with walking trails around the site. We are also proposing the use of golf carts to service the site. So part of the commercial service RVs building will be kind of small maintenance for those golf carts. Next slide, please. And then we get to the RV zone. We were strategic, like I mentioned before, to kind of place this area at the outer edges of the site to provide this kind of barrier between the road and the public road and what's happening on the inside. And what it creates, what we're trying to create here is this architectural style that will basically tie in at the corners and carry it all the way through the Rio and El Camino Real. Not just the plain wall, but an architectural feature that will make the concept flow through together. Next slide, please. You've seen the sketches before, but one thing I want to point out on this is one of the bigger things that kind of drove this site layout too was this alignment to the existing neighborhood driveways that we worked together with the city to make it work and also have this entry on El Camino Real work with what the neighbor is proposing on the side. And like I mentioned before, these walls are representation of an architectural feature that will hopefully tie the project together. Next slide, please. And I'll just leave you with that. As I mentioned before, as a resident of Atascadero, it is very exciting, and we are hoping that you could help us get this project through and not just see it in paper. And with the history of the site, we're hoping that this is the final revision and we could get it through. So I really appreciate it. The whole team is here. If there's any questions, feel free to ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I read the improvements to the roads, El Camino and Del Rio, but there's words in there that maybe I don't fully understand. So can you just explain what they're gonna do to those roads? Oh, sorry, we have public comments now. Does anybody have questions for the applicant? I got all excited about roads. Yeah, Commissioner Schmidt, go ahead.
I was looking for it. I know I read it, but there was a condition that talked about receiving drainage from the road that parallels the project above the RV parking lot, RV area. Do you have any concern about having to deal with that?
I'm sorry, I could barely hear you.
There is a condition specifically addressing the drainage that comes from, what's it, San Rita Road, the one that parallels the project on the upper side. And it places, obviously, the responsibility of taking on that drainage on your project. And is that an issue for you at all?
We have our civil engineer here that she could probably answer that question. I'm not 100% sure, so.
I believe that's condition 40, by the way.
Hi, Rachel Hawthorne, Wallace Group, civil engineer. And we have looked at the drainage preliminarily. And for the most part, Ria Rita actually slopes away from the project, but there is a small amount that does come onto the project. Oh, we are looking at maintaining existing drainage patterns and meeting the city requirements to not let the runoff total from the site be larger than the pre-existing conditions. So we will be, we've already preliminary designed some detention basins to address that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, 40.
Anybody else? Questions for the applicant? No? Oh, I'm sorry, down here. Commissioner Anderson.
Now, you said the water features around the cabanas were going to be purely visual, or are they wading pools? You said they're shallow.
It's shallow. It's meant to be shallow, so it's purely visual.
Purely visual?
Yeah.
Okay. It still sounds nice.
Commissioner Heath, did you have a question?
I do. I'm curious on the length of the RV pads. Are they designed for larger RVs or smaller RVs?
Yes, we do have different sizes. We have a 30 by 60, which is an angle one. We have a 20 by 40, 20 by 30, and a 20 by 40. So we're proposing 4 types of sizes, so 4 sizes. And the 30 by 60 would be for the larger RV.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Almost forgot my second point. Since they're only visual, would they be conducive to like local wildlife, like waterfowl, stuff like that? Would that be encouraged or discouraged for use? How big are they?
That is a good question.
We got a lot of migratory birds, and they would love. They're going to see that. They're going to love the land.
Yeah, and that's something that we have to think about, especially because we're in the middle. We're in the north of Atascadero, so I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, please encourage that. That would be great.
Okay.
Do you have another question? Okay.
Well, I was just going to add that if children were allowed in there, then the fowl would not be there. Yeah. No, I think, yeah, it's really encouraging too, to just know also the projected amount of jobs potentially this is going to. It wasn't mentioned in the presentation, but as you were going and I'm looking at all the different keyholes, literally and figuratively, I'm like, wow, that is a lot of job opportunities for locals and people who actually would probably be getting their first job. So.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that point. I had it on my notes, but I kind of skipped it. But yes, it's definitely a great opportunity to boost the economy, not just with jobs, but in tax revenues. So.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you so much. Oh, sorry, one last thing.
It just needs to be explicit. There are no palm trees then even though there are in the pictures, lots and lots of them. I think I might have seen bottle brush and I also saw something that looked like eucalyptus trees. And I just was curious about those three in particular.
That is a good question. We originally had proposed some palm trees, but we're working with the city to actually develop an actual landscape plan. So next step would be to a more refined planting site plan with actual type of plants, type of trees within the site. So.
And I'm pretty sure we have like a list with the city of like approved things. And I really hope eucalyptus is not on there because those are horrendous. Oh, they're all shaking their heads no. Great. Fantastic.
Those are
Commissioner
actually,
Schmidt.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I want to have fun with this. On one of the illustrations on Del Rio Road, a car was parked on the wrong side of the street and going the wrong way. And I found that interesting.
It's a Tascadero.
Yeah, we took Italy as an inspiration, so I think they drive on the wrong side. So
That's awesome. Okay, good. All right, thank you so much.
thank you.
I'll open it up to other public comment, although if y'all are all part of the team, maybe all the comments got said. But if you would like to have any more public comment, please come up to the podium, state your name, and you'll have 3 minutes. Nobody? Okay, I will go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to the Planning Commission for discussion. And now I will ask about the road improvements, just because I just lived through all the road improvements for the grocery store. And so I'd like to know what is in store. And also, slightly off topic, but when are we going to get a traffic light back? Because that would be nice too.
It would be nice. I did see PG&E out there like last week or the week before, moving the poles that they left in the middle of the road. So I'm hopeful that the traffic light will come back soon. There are lots of words as part of the public improvement requirements. We actually did a plan line setback for El Camino and Del Rio in this area to accommodate any sort of future traffic projections, which pushes them beyond the existing right of way. And those conditions are included to maintain the full build out area outside of their sort of project development scope, and to actually do some road widening along El Camino. El Camino is the least done of the frontages out there currently. So El Camino will have some impacts and some widening for some additional lane striping to meet up with the improvements and the striping that's happening at the marketplace development. And will also allow for some on-street parking in this area, which eventually might be converted into a through lane to allow some additional left turn movements towards the freeway, depending on what capacity we need when we grow more in the future. Del Rio is mostly done as part of the marketplace project. They had to do some significant widening in order to accommodate turn lanes and some of their delivery trucks going into the project site and coming out of their project site. So there was a lot more done on Del Rio Road. And so this project will be doing some curb gutter sidewalk, a little bit of widening. There's a drainage swale that needs to be accommodated along there, and of course, some undergrounding of utilities. So I hope that that answers your questions.
Yeah, so the accommodations made for the delivery trucks for the grocery store, I'm assuming will also accommodate RVs turning on and off of Del Rio. Is that sort of what we're going with?
That is correct, and the applicant had to provide a turning analysis for, I believe it was a Class A or Type A RV.
The big ones?
Yeah, exactly. And that same analysis serves for our emergency vehicles as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Discussion comments here? Oh, my Lord, gosh. Yes, Commissioner Carranza.
Thank you. We have to put up with a lot with our chair here, but it's okay. We love her. And vice versa. So the eucalyptus, the palm, and the bottle brush. So we do not have a updated tree and landscaping. I do not believe the last time I checked with Public Works, but is there some reassurance? Because eucalyptus is unsafe, falling limbs all the time. I've seen them in county parks within this county, and they are horrendous and a huge safety issue with falling on children and cars. And then the palms are not compatible with our neighborhood or our whole town. And then the bottle brush is just completely invasive. I didn't say any of other big offenders, but those are the top that I thought.
So we don't have a required list. What we basically say is it needs to be sort of drought tolerant. You need to meet the state water efficiency ordinance requirements. So you do a bunch of calculations. Generally, you do low water use plants. It does allow for some higher water use plants as an offset to meet those requirements. We don't have any specific bans unless we specifically condition. So if the commission wanted to recommend a condition modification to specifically exclude certain landscape materials, you could do that as part of your motion.
I think that I would like to do that and move forward.
I think that if we keep it to those 3 specific things, I feel like that would be reasonable. Are you guys feeling okay with that?
It definitely changes, I will say, I think for the better, but it changes the whole look of these pinnacle towering palms. I was hoping for a little bit of feedback from the applicant and the representatives if that was like a huge deal for them, but it didn't look like there was a big rock on that. Here we go. Chair, I think you have to probably open something there.
I do. I will need to reopen public comment for you, which I will do because we would like to hear about the palm trees. So just state your name for the record, and then we may have questions for you.
My name's Wes Arola. I'm the landscape architect on the project. Am I good to proceed? Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so of course, some of the illustrations, I think they are illustrations, so they're a little bit embellished. I think we're trying to kind of create that sense of almost nostalgia and excitement of like a resort-like destination. So, you know, there's likely some areas where palms are shown on some of those, you know, literally, you know, kind of Sharpie sketches that I think just kind of, you know, came out because we were so excited and kind of running with the design. I think as things, you know, further with regards to design and really kind of following through with this placemaking, I still feel like there might be some appropriate locations for palms. You know, the resort is in the name of this. So I feel like, you know, but then again, if it's not appropriate, it's not appropriate. But I could see perhaps around the pool area, you know, very, very intentional locations, lining the streets with them, or, you know, blowing up the skyline right out on the front corner, probably not appropriate. But I think in some of those more like amenity rich areas, or where we're really trying to kind of drive home that, I mean, it's a destination. So the materiality and the architecture, all of that kind of vocabulary all works together to really create that experience. So I feel like, you know, there might be a few spots that palms could really help to kind of, you know, complete the story, but yeah, it doesn't need to look like Orange County. It can certainly be much more tailored to this location. I think it's going to be a Mediterranean kind of themed landscape. In some areas, in the glamping areas particularly, we're kind of like celebrating the site. It's going to be very natural. You know, there's literally units that are up amongst the oak trees, so that's going to be very delicate there with regards to the landscape palette. But then again, you know, kind of zooming in on that core area, I think many people, you know, coming here as a destination will be expecting that kind of hospitality like, and we are going for a little bit more higher end, this unexpected, like, well, like there's RVs here, but you almost don't even realize it. So I think it's just, it's kind of, it wants to be an ingredient, the palm trees, but we'll definitely use them in a very intentional way.
So with like all joking aside, what I did here is placemaking. That is a huge piece of this, and palm trees may have a place with the cabana area. You said a different area too, specifically like the RV zone. Is that what I heard? Or
I
no?
think, you know, just kind of off the top and looking up at the overall plan, that central plaza space where you've got, you know, 40, 50 foot tall buildings, you know, you won't have palm trees really like daylighting over the top of those. So it's really where it makes sense. I think it's so much related to the context and those kind of very special areas we're trying to create, the Instagrammable areas, you know, that are unique. You know, it's not just this super generic RV park. This is a resort. So I feel like it's definitely, something that we kind of want to keep in the toolbox if we can, but with the trust of you all and everyone, that we're not going to go crazy with them.
Yes.
We're asking him to be responsible with his palm tree usage.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, without all
And then
jokes aside, yeah,
eucalyptus can go in the trash. too.
definitely, yeah.
And as far as palm trees go, we have one downtown there in the downtown where our founding father planted at the Vaughn Center. It's probably about 100 feet high. And if we look around the North County, palm trees are not, obviously, we would assume that they're not adaptable to the climate, but there are plenty of palm trees in the North County, and they're mostly planted kind of as entrances to older properties. You know, a long time ago, drive to the old, see the two palm trees, drive there, turn left, right? And so there are selective placements of palm trees. But I would like to read for the commission memberships, there's condition 13 that a landscape and irrigation plan compliant with state model water efficient ordinance shall be approved prior to permit issuance. A landscape plan shall be substantial conformance with approved landscape concept shall be submitted and include the following. All plants shall be species shown on survive in zone 7, climate zone 7, as shown in the Sunset Magazine handbook. So that book is everyone's uses that book, and we all know what that means. And so I would say that if we want to add something to it, I would support that. But I do think that the landscape architect knows what we're talking about, and so do the proponents. And so I'm faithful that they will do appropriately what they should do. But if you want to add a condition, I'll support it.
Are there any other questions for our landscape architect?
It's more of a comment. It's like, I like palm trees. I mean, I have a palm tree right outside of, I mean, they look better than the cell towers, I think, but
Yep.
but I have one right out in front of one of my houses. It was there since we bought it. It's about 50 feet tall now. And they're over across the street at the In-N-Out, and you see them dispersed. And it's something uniquely California about palm trees. I grew up in Southern California. So I think if they're sparingly done and done well with intention, which I believe he's kind of commenting on, it wouldn't be comical. And he's definitely not going to lie in El Camino with them. Hopefully we could restrict that.
There
And-
isn't one next to Snoopy's house on your shirt.
I got to draw that in later. I didn't have time, but no, I think, go ahead. Palm trees wouldn't have to.
I appreciate this. I think I could make a motion that is not saying that they are banned,
There
So
we
but
go.
they are very intentional.
the last thing we would need to clarify.
Hold on
is-
1 second, because I gotta close public comment if there are no more questions for a landscape architect or the team in general. No? Okay, thank you so much
you.
for dealing with palm trees.
um,
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close public comment again and bring it back to the commission.
So the only thing I could say to follow up would be, we just need to clarify if children can play with the palm trees. No, but to Dennis's point, though, it does seem like, section 13 is already built into the process where there's going to be some common sense towards the application of trees. So, if you do add any recommendations on it, I'm in support of that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would prefer that we don't dictate from the podium what they can and cannot do as far as landscaping. I trust the staff to work with the applicant to come up with something that's appropriate for the area. And I trust our staff to do that work, and we don't have to dictate that here.
So I can make a motion here. I think if this conversation wasn't had, as comical and maybe as time consuming as one says it may be, I think it is appropriate that the applicant heard that, from the pictures that we've seen to having an honest conversation about using them appropriately for placemaking and those Instagrammable moments. I think that makes sense. The biggest concern though is, lining them on the streets and having that be a precedent, right? Like that is probably where I think the buck would stop. So I actually do feel strongly that that needs to be encouraged. But otherwise, I think all throughout the site, they should have some jurisdiction over that, knowing our/my feedback on the palm trees. So can we?
So are you making a motion?
I'd like to go back to the slide for the motion, and then I'd like to add in a section on just an amendment to the motion adopting the draft resolution. Maybe it's a draft resolution. I don't know if needs to be in.
I think you
one or
just
two.
add the condition on at the end. So you'd say like adopt draft PC resolution, blah, blah, blah.
It would be
And
part of item 2 on the screen.
part of item
that
2
Eric?
on the screen.
Yes, so
part of
you
item
could
two.
just, very loud.
Hi.
For resolution B, you can read out the resolution and then also add with a condition added to, and then explain your condition, be as specific as you can, so it's on the record.
Do you want 2 different motions or can we do one motion altogether?
We should do 2 different motions, one for each resolution.
Okay.
All right, so I'd like to motion to adopt draft PC Resolution A, recommending the city council approve general plan amendment, zoning map amendment, amendments to the Del Rio Road Commercial Area Specific Plan associated with the Del Rio Ranch project, subjects to findings with incorporation of Exhibit B and modified no net loss findings. So that's one. And then also,
And let somebody second that one.
Yeah.
I'll
Oh,
second
okay.
it.
okay. So we have to go through that first.
Okay, sorry, I didn't hear who seconded that.
Randy,
Randy, okay.
Commissioner Hughes.
Okay, so Commissioner Carranza,
Yes.
Commissioner Hughes,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Heath,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Vanden Eyck,
Yes.
Chairperson Keen,
Yes.
motion passes 7-0.
All right, and now adopt draft PC Resolution B, recommending city council approve a CUP for master plan of development for the Del Rio Ranch project, subject to findings and conditions of approval with the addition to, this is hard to wordsmith, to exclude any palm trees on the main frontage roads. I think that's the biggest right there, that they would not be on the frontage roads or visible on those frontage road areas.
So you don't want them to be an entry feature.
Right, no entry feature.
Um,
Not into that private road there, but the El Camino Road and the Del Rio zone. I think entering into is fine, into the site specifically. I think when we get to street trees, that's where I'm finding it a rub there.
Okay, so that was one motion. So staff, do we have an understanding of what that entails so that you can interpret it, or? I just want to make sure that
Yes.
you're able to
Unless there
translate that.
wants to be clarification about
what
entry.
I think
Areas of the
specifically she's
frontage.
saying street trees. So in front of those walls they're building, no palm trees in front of between the walls and the road.
Right.
So if Commissioner Carranza, if you just, maybe let's restate that motion. Just if you could clarify it as, because you're the one
Yeah,
who made it
'cause-
originally.
Yeah, I think the word entry, it starts getting a little hairy, and I could tell that it's literally hairy over there. So it's not the entry, to exclude the palm trees from being in the street tree selection on the frontage road areas that are open to the public there on the sides of the main streetways. That does not mean
Okay.
inside the entryways of the actual private commercial zone.
I'll second that.
On city maintained.
Yeah, city maintained roads, that's a little more specific.
I just want to clarify that city maintained will also be the public road that enters into the project.
I don't think that's needed.
So since we have a motion and a second on the floor, I would recommend we take a vote. It could be one of denial if you would like to, if we want to clarify this a little bit better. But we
mean,
do
if
have
you
a
go to the-
second, so
if
the
you go to the
next
map,
action would
it's
be a vote.
Del Rio and El Camino, that's what I'm saying. I'm not talking about the new established road going inward.
We just need to make sure the language is specific.
Yeah.
Enough. So it's really
Yeah.
between those walls
And-
and the frontage roads. I think that's the specific language that you need to
Yeah.
say, between the walls and the frontage
So,
roads.
so if we could have, I think what Commissioner Carranza was saying is that no palms would be permitted as street trees along El Camino Real and Del Rio Road. However, palms may be permitted at the project entries as an entry feature.
Yes.
Thank you, Kelly.
And just checking, Commissioner Hughes, is that your understanding of your second as well?
All right, so if I pull my second there, can she restate it to correct
Well,
that?
so we already have a motion and a second on the floor, so the next action would be
Yeah.
a vote.
So what I said was basically what we heard as the motion that is on the floor.
That's what Kelly-
And then I'm just confirming that your second is in agreement with how Kelly stated the motion.
Yeah.
Okay, then we can take a vote.
Okay. Commissioner Carranza,
Yes.
Commissioner Hughes,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Heath,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Vanden Eyck,
Yes.
Chairperson Keen,
Yes.
motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
They weren't even wanting to do palm tree. No, no.
Of all the turns that this could have gone.
I know,
didn't
right?
do it in
Yeah.
the
So
country.
thank you for your patience and all your communication and good luck with your project. We're all pretty excited. I can't wait to ditch my kids and go rent a cabana.
You're right.
Good
Okay,
luck.
so we're gonna move on to our third, final, and most exciting item of the night. Our ADU updates. Oh, we're getting Mr. Mountain now. It's like you can't even tell them apart. They have the same mustache, same hair, same glasses. They're basically twins. Yeah, yeah. So we know Kelly's gonna grow a mustache and have big poofy hair. It's just gonna be how all our planning department looks.
I think I'm forever going to be the palm tree girl now.
Yes, yes, you are. Mhm.
Gonna buy some of those old In-N-Out stickers with the palm trees for you.
Mahalo for your patience, everyone.
I think we were able to come up with a good compromise that made you feel good about banning a little bit of palm trees, but also allowing the freedom for them to use it responsibly. They did have a lot of palm trees. Yeah. I just went to Puerto Vallarta. There were
I
a
want
lot.
to
of
make
palm
sure we
trees, but it
don't
was
talk
cool.
about the project if the project is not open for public hearing.
We're just talking about palm tree.
Yeah, we're just talking about palm trees, yeah.
Landscape responsibility.
Okay, we're all ready. As announced, I am Assistant Planner Sam Mountain. Smaller mustache, bigger heart. There we go. Good one. I apologize for my dress today. I wasn't aware that it was like Christmas sweater day. I feel like I'm at a funeral procession at like Santa Claus's workshop right now.
Weren't you here last meeting?
Actually, yeah.
Clearly
yeah.
you do not
Okay, you gave me
listen
the
to
heads up. I'm
me.
sorry. I guess I'm just feeling depressed today for some reason. I don't know. So as the title slide says here, this is an ADU ordinance update. This is to reflect some new state laws that are coming through. I'll dive a little bit more into that. But just for reference, this is a zoning code text amendment, and the city project ID is ZCH24-0098.
Believe we need to do ex parte.
We do. Commissioner Carranza, do you have any ex parte on this item?
No ex parte.
Commissioner Schmidt,
No ex parte.
Commissioner Hughes,
No ex parte.
Commissioner Heath,
No ex parte.
Commissioner Anderson,
No expertise.
Vice Chairperson?
No.
Yeah, me neither. Okay, go now.
Okay, smaller mustache, bigger heart, funeral procession, ZCH 24-0098. So just for some background, earlier this year, the state adopted 2 new bills that make some changes to some sections of the California Government Code that regulate basically how cities can regulate ADUs and basically write the rules for us to a certain extent. So the most substantive and the one that we will be talking about today for the most part is SB 1211. This makes some general updates to ADU requirements, primarily involving multifamily ADUs and surface parking. I'll get into that in a little bit here. In addition, SB 477 was also passed, and this basically just does some minor changes to the numbering, moving some code sections around. Nothing really material has changed in government code nor in our municipal code, but because the code sections are changing, the citations in our code have to change. We do cite certain government code sections, and we're just updating the numbers essentially. So as I said, the main kind of meat of this is our multifamily ADUs, and this is under SB 1211. So under our current code and under state law, there is an allowance for 1 detached ADU in multifamily projects and in multifamily zones. And in addition, if parking is demolished or if there is a garage space converted to an ADU or something similar, that parking needs to be replaced. What SB 1211 says is that within a proposed multifamily development, if it's essentially a vacant site, we are now increasing that allowance from 1 detached ADU to 2. This is a mandate from state law. In existing developments, there is an increase from 1 detached ADU to a number equal to the amount of the existing units up to a maximum of 8. So essentially, if there are 4 existing units on a multifamily site, SB 1211 allows the development of 4 more ADUs. If there was, for example, 14, SB 1211 would max it out at 8. So it's the amount of basically existing units up to a maximum of 8, all detached. SB 1211 also removes cities' ability to require that surface parking be replaced if it's removed essentially for the development of an ADU. And so we're also reflecting that for consistency with state law and updating our code in that way. And I do want to clarify here, all of this is for multifamily ADU projects. So just some analysis here as well. We are also doing some minor amendments to our code alongside. As I mentioned, SB 477 updates a lot of the California government code sections that regulate ADUs, specifically just in terms of the reference that we need to make in our code. The numbers are changing 66582 to 66833, things like that, but it doesn't actually change anything material in the way that our code is applied. However, we are also making some other updates. For the most part, this is just changes in wording for clarity. One big example of that you may notice in the agenda packet is a change in our septic language. So currently, what our code says for ADUs and SB 9 units is that you need a minimum of an acre if you're on septic. This is still true and still the case for example, if you have a single family residence and you want to build an ADU. But what that code language was meant to reflect is a separate policy document called the Local Area Management Plan, and that essentially regulates septic systems within the city. What that document says is that each unit needs a minimum of a ½ acre. Now that sounds pretty similar. 2 units each need a ½ acre. That means a minimum of 1 acre. But it gets a little bit more complicated if, for example, you want to build an ADU and then you want to build another unit on top of that under SB 9, because then what our code technically says is you still just need an acre for both. So we've been going by what our local area management plan says because it is an applicable policy document and it is stricter. And when you have kind of 2 conflicting laws, you generally go with the stricter one. That said, It just causes confusion that our code says you need a minimum of an acre. There's been situations where you have someone with 1.2 acres, for example, and they have a residence and they have an SB 9 unit. They want to build an ADU. Our code says they need a minimum of an acre. In reality, they need 1.5 acres because it's a half acre per unit. So we're updating that language. In addition, there is another state law that we will probably be discussing soon as well for small lot subdivisions. That law specifically has a clause in it that allows us to prohibit ADUs on lots that are subdivided under it. That law was also, I believe, discussed during some recent hearings when it comes to our objective design standards as well. We called them cottage clusters. This is essentially prohibiting ADUs on those lots just because they are already extremely small lots, and state law actually does allow us to do that. In addition, we do have a handful of development standards that are now inconsistent with state law. Smaller things mainly to do with, for example, garage conversions that, depending on the interpretation of the way that our code is written, could be seen as inconsistent with state law. And so we are rewording and removing them for consistency there. And that is pretty much it. So the staff recommendation here is that the Planning Commission adopt draft PC resolution recommending that the City Council amend Title IX, Planning and Zoning, to revise Chapter 5, accessory dwelling units, for consistency with state law, as well as determining that this ordinance is exempt from review under the California Environmental Quality Act. There are some alternatives here. The Planning Commission may recommend modifications to the proposed code amendments, or the commission may determine that more information is needed on some aspect of those amendments, bring the item back to staff. If that's the case, it should clearly state the type of information that is required and move to continue the item to a future date.
Okay, I have questions. So I know that like we have to do this, even though I say no, thank you. But when we're talking about a multifamily development, can you point to one in Atascadero that they could like plunk an ADU down and just be like, nope, we're not adding any parking? Like, do we have something like that now?
So this is not changing the required parking for ADUs, whether single family or multifamily. We do require parking for ADUs. What this is changing is that if, for example, they wanted to build a new detached ADU, but the only place where it would make sense on the lot currently has some parking spaces on it, they would be able to remove those parking spaces and we could not require that they replace them.
So in terms of the examples that you were asking for, we have one on Musselman that wants to add some detached ADUs in their front yard area and in the parking area. What we've seen mostly are garage conversions to ADUs, so existing multifamily properties, and then they convert the garages. Incredibly difficult in a place like Atascadero. I think they're written for larger cities that have a lot of mass transit, walkable streets, on-street parking, and we don't have any of those things. And so it gets a little bit more difficult for us. We're not seeing a huge rush to do conversions because I also think that landlords, for the most part, do want a successful property as well. And I think that if you come onto a rental property and there's no parking within a half a mile, it's just not going to be as rentable of a unit. So we are seeing some, and we do have some concerns, but the state law was written to force us to allow this.
So are like the townhomes on the south side of Dove Creek, are those multifamily? Where they're like duplexes?
Yes, but they are subdivided in a way where they aren't individual lots.
So are we talking more like apartment buildings?
We're talking more like
condos?
apartment buildings. The way that our ADU ordinance is written is that if you're below a certain density, even if you're in a multifamily development, so some of our little PD7s that are small lot, single family subdivisions and multifamily, if you're below a certain density, you get treated like single family. So they would be able to do an ADU on their property in their backyard or something of that nature. That aligns with state law. If you're over a certain density, which Dove Creek might be, then you would get treated as multifamily. So in terms of garage conversions, out of the whole multifamily area of Dove Creek, only 25% of people would be able to do that because they get taken as a whole. And so that prohibits the really small or attached units from every person being able to convert their garage and overwhelming the neighborhood.
Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better. Did anyone else have questions? Yes, Commissioner Schmidt.
Could you put up the page that said, what our law currently said for multifamily, units? Okay. I was under the impression that the way we were interpreting how to apply an ADU to multifamily property, and this might have been what Kelly had just spoke of, but it seemed like I was told that we had to max out the density of density on the property in the multifamily zone before we could add an ADU.
That's correct. That is how we interpret it, and that's, yeah,
And that's not changing.
that's not changing, no.
So then how are we complying with the state law?
So we allow 8 ADUs above site density, which is what state law requires us to do.
So there are a lot of parcels in our community, let's say along Morrow Road, both left-hand, right-hand side, that are dominated by single-family residences that are built on multifamily residentially zoned lands. So they would fall under that interpretation that we're just talking to. They have to max out their multifamily use before they can put an ADU on the property. Is that?
That is correct for multifamily properties. Yeah, the properties along Moore Road are zoned commercial, so those are all non-conforming.
Street away, like on Navajo.
Yes, one street away. Mhm.
Yeah, they're also on El Parque is another, on both sides of the street there. Those are all multifamily zone lots, but with single family houses. Okay, briefly, if you can, I don't know if you can, hopefully you can. SB 684 versus SB 9. Is there a distinguishing? I noticed 684, we use the words small lot subdivision versus SB 9, which we
So SB 9 allows for a single lot split. You can turn one parcel into two if it's an applicable and qualifying single family zone parcel. SB 684 has much more stringent requirements, but does allow for larger lot splits. I believe the maximum under SB 684 is 10.
One of the main distinctions is that SB 684 is for multifamily subdivisions to allow for postage stamp style developments like our cottage standards, and that's what we adopted to address that. And SB 9 is for single family properties.
that makes sense within the urban area. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Okay. I'll open public comment. Anyone would like to speak on this item, please come up to the podium and state your name
Any comment
for
on
3 minutes. Okay, seeing no one in the audience, I shall close public comment and bring it back to the commission.
Can you put up the recommendations?
Just like, let's get out of here.
Yeah, I'd like to make a recommendation that the planning commission adopt draft PC resolution recommending the city council amend Title IX planning and zoning to revise chapter 5 accessory dwelling units for consistency with state law and determining this ordinance is exempt from review under the California Environmental Quality Act.
And I second.
Gotcha.
Just pick somebody in it.
Okay, got it. Vice Chairperson Vanden Eyck,
Yes.
Chairperson Keen,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Carranza,
Yes.
Commissioner Heath,
Yes.
Commissioner Hughes,
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt,
Yes.
motion passes 7-0.
Okay, hold on. I lost myself. I don't know. Okay, so we're done with that. Any commissioner comments or reports?
Sure,
Oh, my Lord.
I will.
Yes.
So I sent out an email to everybody, but I just want to say thank you to all of you. This is my last meeting as a planning commissioner, and it's been a pleasure serving with all of you. It's been 6 years, and it's time to pass the baton on to somebody else, but it's been a good time.
You just didn't want to accidentally get nominated for chair again, did you? Commissioner Hughes, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I still wanted to ask Sam, how did you gauge your heart was bigger? I'm just been thinking about that this whole time.
I eat too much sodium, so I figured that'd be a good gauge.
I too want to say that I've really enjoyed you guys. I know that our next meeting in the new year will be a different conglomeration of people. And we've had some really interesting discussions about all kinds of things. But I think overall that we've, made this a fun and educational experience for our millions of YouTube followers that watch our videos every week. So I appreciate all of you coming every meeting, and yeah, thank you. Any director's report?
Not much of one. We have some holidays coming up, so I think we'll have a little bit of lull in some hearings. We do have another mixed-use project on the horizon to bring to you, so that will be fun and exciting. Our general plan update, we're also planning on having some workshops after the first of the year. Some of that will focus on the general plan and policies, but a lot of that will actually zero in on our zoning ordinance update as well. We have the same consultant team working on both, and so we're dovetailing some of those workshops together as we move forward. I know when people come to our general plan workshops, they really want to talk about how many chickens they can have and urban chickenry. And so they do tend to overlap the way that people see them. And so we're going to start to have some combined workshops, and you guys will all be invited to those. And with that, I think this is the last time we see each other for the year. So happy holidays, and we'll see you in 2025.
Yeah, I can't believe how fast this year went. Okay, I will officially adjourn our meeting and see everybody in 2025.
Just wanted to let you know, palm trees is trending right now.